YouTube will keep working when I'm not staring at it. We'll see.
A few things I just wanna set the record straight on. I talked last week about roads, repairing roads, and if we did a mile of, roads with new infrastructure all underneath it. The actual price is about $250 a square foot, which comes to $1.32 million per mile. That we do new road and all the utilities underneath it. We have 150 miles of roads in the city limits. Anyways, it was just, the number that I gave wasn't quite accurate, but 1.32 million is accurate. I think, the other young lady that was here wanted to know about Chris Smith. He is the attorney for Von Briesen that we've asked to help be the go-between between us and the development company to keep some distance in there. He had a situation where it was before data centers, and so it was 2020 or 21, I think, well, before data centers became a hot topic. There was a lady that was saying some, false stuff about him, on social media and stuff like that. So he sued her to stop the defamation, and he, took it to court. And at the court hearing, the judge said that, okay, it's true that she's lying, that was put in court that she was lying about him, but they didn't grant him the suing because he was acting in a public official capacity, even though he was actually hired by the city. So he's held to a higher standard, which we're realizing as aldermen and mayor that anything can be said about us, whether it's true or false. We just have to take it, I guess. So we're held to a higher standard. Not sure what that means exactly, because it still stinks either way, but that's what that was. And then I asked him about open records, him suing somebody or getting sued because of it. And he said what happened is in Port Washington, somebody asked me last week what the time frame is. So when you're asked for open records, you have 10 days to respond. And the response can be, we have your record, your request for open records, and we will be working on those, putting them together, and we'll get them to you as soon as possible. And it has to be done in a reasonable amount of time. And we responded as Wisconsin Rapids with the open records request. We responded within the 10 days to let them know that we received the request and that we're working on it and that we'll have them there in a reasonable amount of time. And they are still working on them. So they are due to go out soon, and I am pushing to make sure that we get them out soon so that it's out there and it isn't perceived in the wrong way. But anyways, in Port Washington, they got the request for open records. They said they'd be out in a certain time frame, and they got all of them out except for one, and that person sued the city because they didn't get their open records request when everybody else did, and so that was what everybody that pays taxes, put 25 grand in. We fundraised to businesses and got another 5,500 to do that show, so it was a great show. It was. And those guys put on a great show. The whole day was great, so I appreciate everybody.
This might not be a city thing, and that's why I'm wondering, who has the contract with Flock? With the Flock cameras in town? And I would ask this of the county too, because we got a new one in Kellner, and I'm like, what the heck? So is that city or is that?
It's a city contract. When Chief Hostins came in, he wanted to get the Flock cameras. It started out, started out as 4 cameras, and supposedly the company, I didn't understand this, but the Flock company said we needed to have 5 cameras. So last year they kind of forced us to get a 5th camera. So those cameras are in each of the main highways coming in and leaving town. And it's a city contract. The council voted on it and agreed to it. It was a couple years ago that we kind of went through that conversation and said, are we really willing to set up, mass surveillance on ourselves at this point? And they voted yes to it.
Do we know, are we up to more than 5 in the city?
It's just fine.
No, okay. Is the 5th one the one by Quick Trip? I haven't looked at the map lately, so
Yeah,
I don't
I'm not
know. And I
sure.
know there are some in like out in Grand Rapids that's outlying, but do you know when that contract, how long it's good
I think
for?
it's a year contract.
Oh, okay.
You have to update it every year.
Okay,
Or at least we have to put it in the budget every year, so I could
okay.
find out what the contract is.
I was just curious because
Yeah.
that's
don't
been
know.
asked of me too, and I'm like, I don't know whose responsibility
Yeah.
that is.
So are you saying Grand Rapids has their own flock camera?
We have one right in like Kellner, you know, and I don't know because that's the county line.
Mhm.
So that's, I just haven't figured out who to ask yet. Cause we
Yeah,
get plowed, we get snow plowed more by Wood County. So I'm leaning
Yeah.
towards thinking it's Wood County.
Could be. I know ours have to stay in the city limits, so
Mhm.
anything outside of that is somebody else's.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Did I open up the conversation to data centers, if there's any questions? I would like to, if possible, we've rehashed a lot of the 6 points that I guess I always kind of bring out as seem to be the main focal points of what the concerns are. And we've talked about those at length for two sessions now, or 2 meetings. I think if we want to, what we can do, and I'm not pushing us to do this, but we can talk more about, like, if they come forward, we are mandating a community benefits agreement. And that community benefits agreement goes above and beyond the conditional use permit, where we have the conditions placed on it. But those have to stay within the realm of anything that's pertinent to that business and the ordinances that can be enforced and watched over. Whereas the community benefits agreement is stuff that's being asked of a company that typically wasn't, I don't know if it was allowed to be. I didn't know you could ask companies to do more for a community, whether it's buildings or infrastructure or how we want to monitor these things. There's lots of things that can go into a community benefits agreement that they may or may not agree to, but it does set us up in the community that if they are to come in and the council votes them through, planning commission and council, then we have a community benefits agreement that goes, quite far above and beyond what we typically be able to ask from a business. So we can talk about that also at this point in time. But if there's still a conversation around the issues of the data centers, we can start there.
I have a question. Are you aware, is there any sound monitoring going on over across from the mill by Riverview Drive?
They had one set up by
Yeah.
Riverview and
So who's doing that?
Okay, so the company, the development company reached out last week, and they engaged with a PR campaign with the Chamber of Commerce. They talked to Stacy Keevy over there, and I think they reached out to the Mead Witter Hotel, and I think Cobblestone Hotel. I'm not sure if there's other people that they've reached out to. And then through Chris Smith, they asked in an email if they could conduct sound tests, so they could start to figure out how to start monitoring the sound that we all know is a concern for data centers. So that would be the development company or the engineering company that handles the acoustic side. So what we're what's being told to them by the entire country is they have to be quiet. You have to figure out the sound of the fans, of the computers, this noiseless noise, the low hum that goes through everything, walls and windows. Like, there's things that they have to figure out how to deal with this stuff.
It seemed like they only had it up for like 24 hours. That to me isn't long enough to get it accurate.
Especially yesterday was one of the fly days for the Jets. They
Oh,
were
yeah.
very loud yesterday.
Yeah, and it's already gone.
Yeah,
So
I don't know, I could reach out to them and find out what their plan is exactly. Again, we're not talking
I
to
get
them
that.
directly.
But my other concern is if that is just reading decibels,
Right,
from what we've been finding out is that the infrasound, the
Mhm.
lower decibel, is what seems to be more of a problem for people with data centers.
right,
Well,
How
and
does
is,
that get measured?
right.
and would
That's
they
what
be
we're
willing
trying
to
to figure out.
share their results?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, Would they be willing to
Yeah, I
share their
think
results
they're-
so we can see the base lock?
Yeah. My
The-
understanding is their intent is to reach out to certain people and get a feel for, you know, what, like Stacy's, she's kind of the head of the businesses in the community, so they're reaching out to her to say, you know, what are the things we need to focus on? How do we, you know, approach the community? Because ultimately, you know, what we said from the very beginning is you're going to have to reach out to the community itself and have these community meetings with them. So my assumption is they're trying to get, I mean, they're fully well aware of the same issues that we're all aware of. And if they don't address them, then they're the ones with the problems. Because we're the ones that get to say yes or no if you fix the problems, or if you haven't fixed the problems, then, so.
Who did you say was doing, is that PNK Group? Is that who's
Yeah, I
doing
don't
the,
remember the name, it's, PNK Group is not the engineering company, they hired an engineering company.
oh, okay,
And
okay.
I don't know the name of the engineering company right at the top of my head right now. I can find that information out of them.
And PNK Group is only at the top of my mind, because I don't know if any of you saw on Facebook today, and I didn't see it, but others had showed me it, that PNK Group has this like community survey that's a sponsored Facebook post that some people are getting in their feed.
Hmm.
I was out most of the day and I didn't have time to really like look at it. But yeah, it seems like some kind of like survey that they want people to take, and
Mhm.
both the people I talked to about it also hadn't clicked on it yet.
Yeah.
So, but we thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it would be nice. Again, this is the downside. Typically, when you're trying to work with a company that wants to come into your city, you talk to them. But, you know, we're not doing that, so it's harder. So I can reach out to Chris and Chris can find out if they want that. But again, we can't necessarily promote it, right? I don't wanna say, hey, everybody go to this site and answer these questions.
Yeah, that's
for
also
them.
what we were saying too, of
Yeah.
like, what is this?
Mhm. So.
Because it just all of a sudden was, hey, here's this sponsored post you occasionally scroll across, and the name was notable. Like
Yeah,
it jumped out at
PNK
people,
Group.
so.
All right, we'll find out about that.
I guess my other concern is I had seen in a news article from Wyoming that they had problems with the bacterium in the city, in their city water treatment. You saw it too? Yes.
And it was specifically, can't remember the exact type, but it's not good stuff. And that, so concerns of what discharges would be
Mhm.
in the water, chemicals that in some cases, we don't even know the long-term effects of. I saw this morning that, the Nashville Zoo,
Mhm.
they met with the community until 3 a.m. because all these people were speaking about having a data center right next to their zoo. And there were even little kids testifying there at the hearing. And, the mayor there is considering, banning it under, the domain, eminent domain. So, and I'm sure that has never been tested. So that's, I guess, the next forefront of what this would be dealing with. It's just something we've never experienced before.
Mhm.
Mayor, may I respond? Because
Yes, sir.
I have questions, but I also have at least some understanding of the options that are available for something like this. They have stated that they intend to use a closed system,
Mhm.
and that they have not provided any information on what this entails.
Right.
But at the same time, based on what limited information is available, they state that they're going to use 2,000 gallons. So the question is, well, is it really closed? Well, if you circulate water, no matter what your system is, in a closed loop, you are going to have a problem with bacteria. And the reason is that the water that they get from the city, has bacteria in it. Now, maybe not many, but they put chlorine in to try to suppress it. But water treatment plants aren't perfect. They're not 100%. There is some bacteria that can be in the water. And if it circulates in their system, there is food for the bacteria, because although the city tries to take all the organic material out of the water, again, nothing's 100%. It would just be exceedingly expensive to even try to get to that, approach that. So at some point, they say, well, it's good enough. And it is for human consumption. But if you're circulating the water in a closed loop system, and in my understanding, their system would be water that goes through pipes and comes in contact with smaller pipes that come from the computers, the servers. And maybe they're using some kind of refrigerant in those small tubes. And they then go into the bath of water, and you have heat exchange between the small tubes that come from the computers and then the water that's in the closed loop. So you have this exchange of heat. Now the problem is, if you have bacteria grow, they will attach to any surface, and they will build up on these small little pipes, and it then creates a barrier, so you don't have the exchange of heat at the efficiency that they want. So the way to get around that is to put in a chemical, they call it a biocide, to suppress the growth of bacteria. And these are toxic chemicals. But if it stays in a closed loop, then it's not going to come in contact with humans. So when they talk about exchanging 22,000 gallons, my question is, well, is it really a closed loop? Or are they just simply trying to avoid having to use this biocide to deal with the bacteria? But the bacteria should be just bacteria that comes from the water treatment plant.
Mhm.
That's just there. But it should be as simple, really as simple as that. Now, there's Legionnaire disease and all kinds of other strange bacteria, but that usually comes from the air or an environment where it could grow, like a hotel. But in a closed loop system, if they're using initially city water, the bacteria should be limited to what's in that water, which shouldn't be much, but you create an environment and you have the food source, this organic material that's in very small concentrations, but it can support growth of bacteria.
So I can tell you what I know. What I know is we talk to the wastewater treatment center. We do multiple industrial accounts now, and they monitor the water that's coming from those accounts, and many of them had to, especially the leachate from the landfill. And Mariani's had some stuff too, so we had to say, stop. You can't send us your water until you pre-treat this water and get this stuff out of it or neutralized. And they work with them to do that, so, because they're highly regulated by the DNR, so they're not just working autonomously. And so they have been able to get all of the water that comes in from our industrial accounts to the point where they can bring it into our system, mix it with our wastewater from residential waste and stuff like that, and make it what they need to in order to have it checked by the DNR and sent back to the river. So then I asked them if they would take some time and do some research and talk to the wastewater treatment plants that are dealing with the wastewater coming from closed loop systems when they're flushing their systems, and other counties that are dealing with data centers. And find out who's testing their water, if they're testing it on site or if they have a third party that's testing the water. And let's find out what is actually happening with the water in data centers. And so far, they haven't found any issues with water coming out of the data centers or with testing the water at a higher level, any issues with
Did
that
you-
water.
Did you see the article? It was from Wyoming.
China Mall.
They had shut down their water treatment plant in their town for 2 days to be completely drained. And they stopped the AI center from being able to discharge it. Now the AI center has to haul it out.
Okay.
But is that an expense the city wants to go through? Having to shut down their water treatment plant?
Again, I can't really speak to everything that happened there because I don't fully know the details behind it. Of course, we don't wanna.
That
take
was
on
also
somebody
a closed
else's
loop
expense.
system.
Yeah. But I guess my questions, again, I could pose questions like, were they monitoring it immediately when a new customer comes on board? I would be monitoring it and kind of figuring out what is there, did they just let it go, and what was it exactly? Was it something that mixed with everything else that they have, other customers, or was it specifically the data center water? And what made the data center water so bad? I guess those, would be some of my questions. What was in it?
It is in that article, but I don't-
Yeah, it
I don't remember.
lists everything that you brought up in that article.
Well, and could that be something that we write into a community benefits agreement of your we are gonna monitor the water initially anyway, but if your water's found to be problematic, if it would go to the extent that it affects our water treatment center,
Right.
you would have this level of a fine. That's
Right.
just me throwing that out there. Is that
We'd have
something
to
that you can?
monitor it every day.
Mhm,
Just
mhm.
issues,
And then
yeah.
the cost of remediation.
Yes, the cost of
Right,
remediation,
shut
there it
down for
is,
2
yeah.
days To clean out our system, that shouldn't be our responsibility. We didn't do it, you did. So in our benefits agreement, I fully support that.
Mhm,
We're
mhm.
monitoring, this is how we're monitoring, this is what's gonna happen, not it'll be in our fine either. A good fine if you don't keep your water safe, and then paying for remediation.
Mhm.
I think
Or
we're
do you
all.
have that in the cup rather than
That would
CBA?
be in the CBA. Okay, the agreement. Also the same for noise, we've talked about that too, like you can monitor the noise and fine them a large amount, every day that they don't fix the noise.
But then that still
Not
don't
fine
help, the-
DNR, but it's gotta
but
come
that
in
don't
the
help the
contract.
residents.
What's that?
Just finding them is not gonna help the residents. We still have to listen to that noise.
Yeah.
Unless we make the fine substantial enough that it hurts.
And make
And
sure, you know,
we can. That, we can do it. And if it comes down to that,
So what we're going by is all these other data centers, they have tried all that, and it just, nothing seems to be helping.
I haven't seen anybody with a community benefits agreement. and-
That I do not know.
there's a
But
new
as far as
system.
like the CUP, why can it be written in there for the, it talks about the decibels,
Yeah,
but not the
yeah.
infrasound.
Yeah, it's gonna be in there, one way or the other, even if we can't, the hard part is if you can't monitor it, if you can't test it, you can't hear it. I mean, again, it's a tough one to like enforce.
You can, because Joe was saying, a sound engineer, they can do it.
Yeah.
There is a way to monitor.
If there is a way to do it, then we're doing it. I mean,
At
this
their,
is all new to
at their
me.
expense.
Yeah,
not
it's
the
all at their
city's.
expense, it's not our expense, yeah.
Mayor,
Yes,
the issues that in regards to water, I'd like to just state a few more things. What you said is certainly true, and it applies to every industrial company. Any company that generates industrial waste and wants to discharge it to the municipal wastewater treatment plant has got to meet certain water quality regulations. It doesn't matter who you are.
Right.
And so the city surely has this in place, that they have to, a company either has to typically would pre-treat their
Right.
water and meet certain standards that the city requires, and then they can discharge to the municipal collection system. Or the other option is that they contract with a private industrial wastewater treatment facility. And in big cities like Milwaukee, they have such facilities where they contract with factories that produce small amounts of industrial waste. And it's just cheaper to have it treated by a private industrial wastewater treatment plant than to have their own facilities. So the industrial wastewater treatment plant has to meet these certain standards in order to discharge it to the municipal wastewater treatment system. Now that, obviously, in a small community, there isn't, as far as I know, industrial wastewater treatment facilities that are available. So companies would have to treat it to meet those standards.
Right.
And those should be in the city's regs, so it doesn't matter if it's a data center
Right.
or any other kind of development, that they have to meet certain water quality standards in
Right.
order to be able to discharge to the city, or else they cannot
Right.
discharge. So there's no well, there could be a fine, but of course, depending on what's in the water, could be really detrimental to the city's infrastructure. And,
Yeah,
So-
we've never had to find anybody, we usually just talk to them and we're able to work together. I know
Mhm.
somehow data I know it's a specific industry itself, and I know that the theory right now is that they all lie and they all, say that they're gonna do this, or they don't care about anything except for themselves. But so far, we haven't found any large industrial accounts to not care about anybody except themselves. They actually say, yeah, whatever it takes, we'll make this happen, and they make the investments on noise and water and everything else that we've asked for them. But at the same time, you have to be willing to, enforce the regulations if they're not willing to, pitch it.
I'm looking at, Chris Smith's notes from a speech he gave at a land use, conference in section 5, proactive community engagement strategies. Section N, negotiating commitments and development agreement. I see it says local hiring preferences during construction incorporated in developer agreements, water conservation commitments, is some of it. Have you discussed with Chris Smith perhaps getting this group or these builders to commit to local hiring and training of community members to operate the water pretreatment facility?
We haven't talked about the water pretreatment facility quite yet, because we haven't quite got to that point yet.
Okay.
I know we are talking about everybody who works here, we want, to the degree possible, to be local, to be trained local, talking with MSTC and UW Stevens Point. I think, Mike, if you want, if you wanna write down all these questions that you have, I'm certainly willing to call Chris and try to get verification for you, or if you want to, I can get you his number and you can talk to him directly and kind of work through the issues that you have with him directly, would be good too. Yes, sir.
I'm Alex, just local lawyer in town. I appreciate you being here and doing all of these informational sessions. Us lawyers, we like guarantees, we love accountability, we like rules and structure, and otherwise, people wouldn't stop at stop signs, and so, I have a 4-year-old daughter. I live, I guess, 3 miles away from the potential site. And I want to raise her here, and I want her to be very proud of her community, and yeah, I plan to spend the rest of my days here too. It's a wonderful place to live, and I feel fortunate every day to live in Rapids, and so I'm coming at this from a place of good faith and but accountability and critical analysis. And I think the main thing for me is guarantees of what if there is, let's say there's an accident or an ongoing, what would otherwise be considered a public nuisance. What if the level of PFAS, the level of PFAS effluent is sizable? What if noise really is off the charts on a continuous basis? What if vibration echoes across the river and affects people's sleep and you know, I know that's still being researched and that kind of thing. I really appreciate, the notion of a community benefit agreement addressing all of this. But what I'm interested in, mainly, is enforcement. These companies are, as we know, worth, billions, hundreds of billions of dollars. We've seen, we've seen what they do to communities, and it may be bad eggs, I can't speak to all of them. But let's say, we revoke the conditional use permit, for egregious violations, continued violations, we impose fines. At what point, and the comment was made, and I really appreciate that, you know, we levy a fine that makes it hurt for them, but the fines to these corporations often mean nothing. And at what point, do we have another type of enforcement mechanism at a local level to keep them honest? I mean, I was thinking about this, like, well, physically, like, what would that look like? You know, we're used to bailiffs in the courtroom, we're used to sheriff's deputies, you know, enforcing the law, executing warrants, conducting evictions, you name it. Will there be, also consequences of arrest and prosecution, for, again, these egregious violations that threaten, that are obviously in violation? Because, again, we see over and over again, based on my own research, that money, thrown at these fines are absorbed in their cost of doing business, for these places. So, maybe this has already been asked, so I apologize if there already has been, but what do we have in mind that way, or what's been discussed?
So you're saying if they don't,
Yeah,
if things happen and they don't try to fix them, they're not working with us.
basically a last line of defense, you know, they're wonderful to our face and onboarding process, but then turn into just a rotten neighbor.
Right. Again, we usually go by, I think, the way the laws are written in terms of what we can and can't do. I mean, we face on a much smaller level, you know, people's yards and trying to keep people's yards clean and what that does to the community, or noise issues that are in the community. So I get it. Like, it's hard because we're always walking the fine line of what role does government play. So when it comes to enforcement, if you're saying, do we have the ability to say, you know, we're gonna come and arrest you and put you in jail if you don't, fix the noise issues or the water issues? I can't speak to that right now. Like, I don't feel like I have that kind of power to be able to, you know, it's gotta go through the system, just like ordinance issues and everything else. But I can get back to you on that. But what I do think, I was just thinking as you were talking, is like, I mean, would it help if we put together a group of people who, because I understand what you're saying is, you know, we're residents just like you guys are residents, and we're the ones that were, at this point, probably silly enough to run for office and get put in this place at this point in time. But we're here, and we're not shirking our responsibility. We're doing what we signed up to do. But at the same time, I think we can put together a, you know, smart group of people in the community that can make sure that you have all open, you know, communication with the community benefits agreement, the conditional use permit, so that nobody can, you know, feel like we're all doing things, sneaking behind everybody's backs and doing all these, you know, dirty things. I'd much rather have lawyers and people who are thinking these things through and do have a mind that's set in a certain way. So if you guys are willing to be a part of that conversation, I would enlist you guys to help us do that. And then when it gets to that point of answering these tough questions, you know, we're gonna have to have answers to them. You know, we're gonna take it as far as we can, because in the end, none of us want something that's bad for the community, but at the same time, we don't necessarily wanna stick our head in the sand and walk away from something that could be really, really great for the community, because there are a lot of good things that can come from the data centers and the technology and the future of where we're going as a world. The money that does come with these things is kind of community altering, and we are going through a downturn. Not that I want this to be about money, but at the same time, we do have budgets to meet and people to pay and mouths to feed, so that does play a part in how we think about the future of this community, is where's the money gonna come from to keep it up?
Speaking of which, this particular, investment group or LLC, do we know that they have a good reputation for being a good neighbor, for operating at the highest level of compliance you know, for instance, operating what's called a low impact, low noise, low vibration, low temperature, type of facility? For instance, if we were to do an analysis of like some bad eggs versus some good ones out there, do we know how this company falls?
Yeah, this company, to be honest, we're still investigating, we're still trying to figure out where they're at. We kind of, again, separated because we didn't want to talk directly to them and be accused of, you know, trying to help them, so we're separating, and it makes it much more difficult to have those conversations, but we are working on it still. As far as I understand, they haven't built many data centers. They have built more warehouses, like the buildings they want to build, and build the warehouse into a data center. But again, I can't really speak to their reputation as of yet. I think we're kind of waiting for other councils to do that, but I think some people sitting right in front of me, I'm assuming you already did your work. I know Mike's already expressed some thoughts about, you know, their past and who they are. One fellow's Russian, and the other, you know, some of the other people are from New York, so I don't know, but we haven't investigated their friends and their families and, you know, where they come from, and gone back to all their different businesses. And I know, you know, usually any company these days has multiple LLCs that are doing different things under one umbrella, whether we call them shell companies or we call them different functioning LLCs that are doing different things. Those are all things that we're still looking into and trying to get a clear picture of, you know, what to expect as they are still moving forward.
So this group is actually just the ones building the warehouses.
Yeah.
So we still don't know who would actually be operating the AI, the
Well,
data centers?
It's not good. So my understanding, and I don't know this, so like both construction and Myron Construction, they're building data centers. Econ and Van Herk, these are all local companies, are building the electrical parts of data centers all around the state, all around the country they're going to. And then we have heating and air conditioning companies in Wisconsin that are building data centers around. So it takes a lot of people to build a data center. You got the building, but then you have everything that's inside, and that's, you know, I just read an article on this updated system of like full submersion. So it's not just an enclosed system, loop system, it's actually submerging these pieces in water and sucking the heat out of them that way, and then the noise is cut down because of the vibrations, and the fans are gone. Again, it would be nice to, I can reach out to Chris and say, can you ask them about, you know, this system and see if that's something they're talking about. But my point is, there's a lot of different companies that are building it. Who's actually renting the space could be 100 different companies. You know, once you set up the data center, people are just renting. Like for the city, we have a data center in a closet in our building, but we really should move out of it. And, you know, so we could then buy data in this facility down the road, if it were there, and be able to store our data there in the cloud or however this whole thing works, because I'm not gonna be
So
able to go
who's
too far.
required to sign the CUP and the benefits? Is it the person building, or is it the person that's actually gonna be operating?
It's gonna be the developer. The
Should
developer.
it not be both?
Well, it's the developer, because the developer is gonna own the building and they're gonna operate it. According to what I understand, this company, and my understanding is most companies, unless it's owned by one of the big four, they buy it, they build it, and then they sell it after a couple of years. Somebody else buys it and they end up running it, and they become more of the data company that's running this facility, like a landlord for an apartment complex. So they build it, one company builds it and kind of leases it for a few years and rents it out, and then they sell it to somebody else. it's not the greatest, analogy because, you know, apartment complexes can get a little bit run down, so I get it.
And the people who would be like renting the space or using the space wouldn't necessarily need to sign the community benefits agreement because they don't have they're not held to that standard. Where it's like the person who owns the building is responsible for making sure the water is safe. The person who rents the space is just there renting the space. They don't have any buy-in on how the water is treated because they don't run any of the equipment. They're just buying space.
So whoever owns the building, owns the data center is the ones who we're going to be signing the agreement with, and the CUP will follow every owner if they sell it off. That same CUP and the same will be written into the community benefits agreement that this always follows the person who owns it or the company that owns the facility.
Based on your, feeling about a community benefits agreement traveling with the land, in more of a zoning sense. In about 2017, there's a Wisconsin State Supreme Court decision, which you can ask Chris about. It's Zwiefelhofer, fun name to say, where we can use home rule and the police power to regulate the behavior of, essentially, it's not geographic, it's not zoning, but it's to regulate the activity in the town, wherever it were to be conducted. Don't you think we also need a police power ordinance that's separate from zoning to regulate this type of conduct so that we don't run into a situation where someone says, I'm just renting a place. Sorry, I gave you the dirty water. And could you talk to them about drafting that?
Yeah, so I think we're gonna have to talk more. Maybe we can meet for a couple hours or something and just get into more details on what, because again, you're talking a lot of legal stuff that I think the other legal people should be here talking with you about. And that's why I'm saying, if you guys want to be a part of this conversation, I think it's good. That way, everybody else that's, you know, worried knows that you guys aren't on the inside. You guys are just part of the community, but a part of the same conversation.
What could, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Like citizen advisory.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that that was the same road I was walking of, I think it would go a long way with the community to be proactively setting that up rather than reactively waiting for the company to finally come with whatever they're gonna come with, because they're still supposed to present to the community, right? Like they agreed,
Again,
kind of.
that's- Yeah, they agreed to a community benefits agreement, but they don't necessarily, again, I don't know if it's the right word, but I kind of say we're redefining how things are going here. But typically, we're just following a process and asking them to go above and beyond, to do community outreach, stuff like that. Most businesses don't come into a town and start doing community outreach and all that kind of stuff. So they're gonna, if they do it, they're going above and beyond to do that. And we're willing to ask them to do anything, and they're able to say yes or no to it. But I think that goes a long way to have, you know, a citizen board. Typically, that's what we were, right? We were elected to be a citizens board, but nobody trusts the people that are elected right now. So we have to actually kind of hire other people or bring in other people that aren't actually elected right now to be the people that people trust. So whatever we have to do to make that happen, I guess that's what we're trying to get to.
Did you recently, what were some of the positions you were looking for citizens to fill on other, I don't want to say boards, but hasn't there been a couple things in the last month that you were looking for citizens to sit on?
There's a library, I mean, we have tons, not tons, but we have commissions, boards, and not committees, those are filled by aldermen. But like the library board, we needed somebody for, I think we filled up the ethics board recently.
Ethics, that's the one it was. I just remember that being posted. Could it be something like that where the city proactively says, we're looking for, I mean, you would have to figure out like who from the city is gonna be involved with writing the CBA. you know, is it you and 2 aldermen, or plus the, like, I don't know. But, so
Right
who
now,
from the
all of
city?
us
Are there like 5 from the city side and 5 from the community side?
Mhm. Yeah, I can look into
To,
it.
to start really ironing out, what is the highest standard that we could push for?
Right.
Because it is very, like, we could very well say, these standards are very, very high, and they maybe will say, we don't want to meet that, so
Right.
see you later. But for the community to come, or for the city to be proactive about doing that rather than reactive in waiting for them to come and back and say, well, this is what we're gonna do. No, here's what we want. You guys took your sweet time. Here we are with what we want.
Yeah, again, the tricky part is cart before the horse, right? Because we don't even know where they stand right now. So I understand what you're saying, and that's kind of the battle we're facing is if they haven't even brought anything yet, we don't
Mhm.
really even know what to write
Mhm.
anything up about, so we're kind of walking that back and forth right now. But I agree with you. If we, you know, I'll talk to the folks, in the city and say like, we want to develop this and have, you know, 5 people. Again, this is what, to me, this is what this was always about, was to understand better what the community wants and so we can internalize it and take it and be able to write a full-on community benefits agreement. But I would be even more comfortable if we had some, you know, like goodwill, like you kind of have to have some like rationality to it, like taking the emotions, boiling it down and saying, what can we actually do legally? Because then the question comes up, what can we actually do legally? Like, how far can we push the enforcement to be able to go and arrest the owners of a data facility if they, you know, do A, B, C, and D? Like, whatever legally we can do to make this binding and keep us as safe as possible, that's what we want to do. And if it does make them walk away, then they walk away. But I think that's definitely what we want, is to make it as binding as possible, and that way we have all our bases covered. But I need the finest legal minds to help me do that.
I
Is it
have
really-
a question, and it
Yeah.
goes right to your point, and it has to do with jobs. If any company were to come to the city and say, I'm going to create 500 jobs, then you're going to get wide support, because that is a major criteria in evaluating the proposal in general. But jobs is a really murky issue with this whole industry. And if we could, let's just take Foxconn as an example, as far as to put together maybe some guardrails. Foxconn came in with, they said they were going to create 13,000 jobs, I think it was. It was an astronomical number. And the state was going to provide some cost sharing, I think $3 billion, as to lure them into the state. Well, so guardrails were put up, and such that they had to meet certain targets in order to get that money. And when they failed to do that, then, and they failed to meet targets in terms of the physical structures and production and such, then the state could say, okay, we're not gonna give you that money. So my concern is that a company can come in and say, well, we're going to create hundreds of jobs, and they have thrown out, I think, 200 jobs. But think about it, they could say anything. And once they get the permit, then what if they don't meet that target? What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
And so the question is, can the city, there's a couple of questions. Can the city say, well, if you're going to create 70 jobs per shift, what are those jobs? And where are they located? And how long are the people? I mean, all these questions, how do you define a job? But you could also go so far as to say, because the development is in phase, is in 3 phases, that if they don't meet their target for phase one, then the permits for phase two and three are void. I mean, I don't know from a legal standpoint, but I think about what the state did in regard to Foxconn, made it, once they got permits, it wasn't a complete blank check in that they could do whatever they want. If they were going to deviate from the agreement, there were consequences.
That's what we want.
And jobs to me is the real issue, because that's what's going to really provide economic growth to the city. And as we know, AI is all about getting rid of jobs. That's the whole impetus for all this money, is that they can then provide its capability to other companies to do more with less labor.
Yeah.
And that itself is a frightening proposition, because you can have huge amounts of layoffs nationwide as a result of a few companies being able to provide enhanced capability to run businesses. But that's beyond the issue of building the facility, but
Yeah. This is when I get, cut you off.
yeah, I'm worried that they can throw out any number, and then if they don't meet it, what are we going to do? We're gonna
So-
sue them?
So again, this gets into territory like I own a business, 12 families feed their families off of what we do at Express Recycling. If the city's gonna come in and tell me what I need to do and how I need to do it and what I need to do with the employees and everything else, I just don't believe that that's government's role. So if we're gonna like micromanage this business and tell them exactly what they're gonna do, how they're gonna, right now, they're not asking for any money, we're not putting any money, we're not offering it to them. I don't know what the state's doing, it's not our domain. I would much rather have 500 businesses come and grow into this area that employ 20 people than have one business that employs 2,000 people, because we've been through that and we see where it goes. I think with the data, with the computer technology, people are working, they're creative, there's new jobs that they're creating themselves that are popping up all over the world, and they're working for China from Wisconsin Rapids and vice versa. This is all opening up a whole new dimension to the future of the world that I don't think any of us fully understand yet. I don't, but I think it's here, I think it's coming, and it's only gonna continue to grow, and we're either going to safely and as much as we can enforce it, be a part of it, or we can not do it. And I understand people say, well, then let's just not do it, let's not be a part of it, but that's okay, except for the future of Wisconsin Rapids, the kids that are here, that grow up here, that wanna come back here. We're kind of gotta think somewhat about them too, and not just say, well, I just want what I want right now, right here, and I just wanna protect this little piece of my land. So, I don't know, there's a lot of different ways to look at this. To answer, I guess, specifically the question about somewhere between 20 and 200 jobs, we don't necessarily, we can put it in the CBA, like, you have to employ this many people, they have to be from, Wisconsin or central Wisconsin area. All the companies that build the buildings for you have to be from central Wisconsin or Wisconsin. We can do all that, we can put it all in the CBA.
But the people that hire, and I don't know, maybe Kevin knows more about what it takes to run a data center from the inside, but if it's 50 people, even if they hire somebody from Washington DC that has the skills to do that, they're gonna move here, they're gonna live in the community, so we're still providing that part of it. Maybe there's not the skill set that we need to run the center right in Wisconsin Rapids is what I'm saying, so they're still gonna move here and live here, they're not gonna commute from Washington DC or wherever it is, so we're still providing that.
Well, some of these jobs can be done off campus or remotely.
Oh,
Plus,
Yeah.
plus then you can have families.
Yeah, make sure
moving
it's on
away.
campus.
Well, and I went through this literally 2 days ago when I called my eye doctor and I found out my eye doctor closed because I'm pretty sure because they couldn't get a doctor. And then my kids were asking and I'm like, well, I got to explain baby boomers are aging out and retiring. Like, when I would go to the eye doctor in the past couple of years, we get a traveler and I'm like, this is weird. And she's like, yep, I come up from Milwaukee 3 days a week. When I go to the dentist, my dentist is like, do you know any dentists? Because no one wants to move up here where we don't have what they are accustomed to in the big cities. Like, so yes, you do find some people who move here because it's peaceful and it is what it is. But for the most part, it works the other way historically. Does it not, that people move to cities? Yes, there are very good things about living here and we all have our positive things, but we can see it right now here in our community that we don't have doctors and dentists and veterinarians.
That's
Yes.
everywhere.
It's a problem with private investment. They're not investing in small communities. They're not necessarily even investing in bigger cities. They're investing in corridors. I mean, look at between Milwaukee and Chicago. They're not interested in small communities because that's not where, from a private investment standpoint, where the best investment is. And that's a problem. That's a problem nationally.
I heard an ad on the radio on my way down south of Madison 2 weeks ago. I was listening to Milwaukee station. Fond du Lac got some kind of government grant that they are courting young families with between $9,000 and $16,000. I can't.
9,500.
Okay, it is $9,500 to please move to Fond du Lac. We need workers. That's to the right person. That's pretty tempting.
But again, that's not a private investment decision. That's government trying to change the investment strategy. And those are two different kind of trends.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, if investment was in the hands of government, then they can allocate money to small communities to keep them vibrant. And it's just a different model. And of course, government does spend a lot of money, invest a lot of money. But that's not happening in the private sector. It's especially at the level of these large companies.
And then we get back to, because I would be very interested to go deeper into this what is the survey that the city has out right now, about the future of the city? It was done in 2017 or 2018, but there's a new survey out. What is that?
Comprehensive plan. I was just reading more about this because I always am frustrated at the zoning code that was voted in 2018. That's what people get so angry about with, we gotta be this far away from the roads, this far away from each other, this many trees. Like, it was a whole thing that the state came up with that was everybody that was a municipality had to have a comprehensive plan so that the state was organizing itself and the cities, so that they would make more sense. Just to take a step back to what you're saying, I mean, you gotta figure 120 years ago when the mill got started, it was a different, like, even compared to the baby boom generation or whatever, we're talking 120 years ago, 20, 30 years before that, Wisconsin wasn't even a state yet, right? 150, and we just celebrated 150 years. So we're talking about farmers, right? Farmers are the ones who built the farms and built the cities and built the logging companies and built what ended up winning World War I and II. Like, there is a different group of people, like, the last remnants of them are just the ones that just finished at the mills, the ingenuity that went into what they were doing. I mean, it was amazing what we're able to do. I'm not saying we're kind of ingenuitive in different ways now, softer hands probably, but, it's not the same. It's just not the same country as it was before. So then the city itself grew up in a way that was haphazard. Roads go this way and that, little house here was probably the original farmhouse, So now they want to as things disappear or are taken down, they want them to be more organized, like commercial districts here. And
That's what the state wants,
residential
is what
here.
you're saying?
That's what the
this-
comprehensive plan wants, that the state kind of put on everybody to come up with. So,
Ah.
yeah, back in 2018, Mary Jo Carson was our mayor at the time. She worked for the state for a long time, so she was a part of that conversation and she understood it, and they put a lot of comprehensive planning into effect, which then annoys people, people like us that just want to get stuff done, but it helps plan for the future to say, let's try to do this a little bit more organized in how we move forward and safely and kind of aesthetically more pleasing. So that's what that plan is. So it's almost 10 years. By the time we're done with it, it'll probably be 10 years that we go through that and kind of update it. And
So that survey is looking at more of the physical structure of the city and how things are zoned and planned,
yeah,
and
more
less
so
of
than-
less of the idealistic, what do we want to be? It's not that conversation.
So, yeah, I mean, that really comes down to the people, right?
Mhm,
Like, the people are the ones who start businesses, the people are the ones who work hard, the government doesn't do that, they just kind of try to organize it, the police are there, the fire are there, the streets are there. I think sometimes we think the government should be doing too many things, or we want them to do too many things that they don't really do, and I wouldn't be very good at, because it's just made up of people. And so for me, a city's gonna grow, like, we're going to find our new future by getting to work and learning and teaching our kids, going to school, going and working at other companies, bringing that stuff back. Like, my kids love Wisconsin Rapids. They don't call it the Crapids. Like, they're all young kids. They wanna come back. They wanna be here and invest and raise families here. Maybe they won't, I don't know. But we go out, we get information, we bring it back. We can get on our computers and connect with anybody around the world and bring that information back here. And we build our community. The government doesn't build our community personality wise. That's my take on it.
Just building on that theme, kind of the thing, the perceived kind of veil of secrecy and that kind of thing. So at this point, does Attorney Schill, the city attorney, does she act on behalf of the city in negotiations with Attorney Smith and the developer, or what does the field look like that way in terms of negotiation and who represents who?
Yeah, well, we have kind of a team, Kyle, this is typically would be Kyle Kearns' job, right? To kind of help clear the path or build the path, so that this industry could move in like we did with businesses in the past. That's his job. And then Tim DeSorcy is there for financing, and make sure, when we're talking about numbers, I'm there for, I guess, executive calls when needed, or just to be another set of ears. Sometimes I contribute pretty well. And then Sue would be the attorney, and she is, gonna be the one, but when I said, I think we need to bring somebody else in because this is beyond what, we're capable of. Not that we're not capable of it, but I think it was a safe move to bring somebody else in. And my thought is he's the right person, but we certainly can have the conversation. I've checked credentials and he's very respected. The company is very respected. So I never thought twice about this person that we brought in as our guy in between. So he talks with Sue, I talk with him, Kyle talks with him, and then we get him to communicate with the developer itself, and then he brings that information back to us. And we're kind of using him as that go-between and standing firm that we've asked for certain things and we can't move forward from our end until those are met. And that just comes down to the legalities of the planning commission and what we need in order to be able to present that paperwork pretty much.
And so, does he also represent the developer?
No. So he invoices us, and then we send our invoice to the developer, and the developer pays us, and then we pay him. So he doesn't know, again, he's a professional attorney, right? He knows his responsibility, who's hired him, but in any developer's agreement, or at least in ours, I assume this was in most ordinances, but in our ordinance for developers' agreements, if we feel we need to hire somebody outside of, with more knowledge than we have in order to help us with this development, then that company has to pay for that attorney or that set of engineers or that whatever. And they have to agree to that if they wanna move forward.
So Attorney Smith, he doesn't owe a fiduciary duty to the developer, he owes that to the city.
He's our representative, we're his clients, so.
Where
And the
is
bill
he
comes to
from?
us, the bill comes to us, not to them. Like, he doesn't send them a bill, he sends us a bill.
Where is he from? Is he local?
Yeah, he's in Wisconsin, I think he's outside of Port Washington area, but I don't know that for
Not
sure.
in our area.
No, he's not, but he's from Wisconsin. But I got, I'm trying to work on getting some more attorneys on board here, so we'll have some more local people here.
Did Attorney Smith, did he draft the conditional use permit ordinance language that was voted on a few months ago, or?
No, we didn't know him at that time. That was Kyle Kearns reached out to other community development people to find out what the best way forward was for the different avenues we could have went down. And one of them was the conditional use permit, the definition of such. I couldn't tell you offhand exactly which communities. I think it was kind of he pulled parts from different communities as to what that was for the definition. And then said, if we go this route, this is what we can do, and we can talk about this, and we did change it. I think we took about 3 months to kind of work through the language of the ordinance and decide this is the direction we wanted to go, outside of trying to zone them out, which we didn't at that time think was even possible. Like, that's our understanding, is we don't get to zone out industries, but now things are changing, so. Or we could have done a district overlay or a zoning district overlay, where you just create a new thing and then put it into a zoning district. We chose not to do that. And then we had the ability to just let them move into a industrial zoned area and build without any regulations. So we said, let's put as much regulation on them as we can, so we have control over what's to come. And that's what we voted on 3 months later.
And, so it sounds like the conversation is ongoing at this point, or I forgot which meeting it was mentioned in, but there was a kind of a time when they went silent, the developers went silent, or?
Not so much silent, they, when I went to the Charlie Barron's, gathering, and then I went to the next one, sometime the next couple of days. Actually, I saw you there, at, Beast Tap, yep. And my takeaway from those were that this community wanted us to slow things down. So I got the city together and we said, I think, do we see any problem with asking them to slow things down? And, so we reached out to them and said, how do you feel about slowing this down? And they're actually happy to slow it down because, again, these are things that, well, you weren't here for it. So I'm going back to the very beginning in some ways, but, they were looking to buy the land and move forward because we didn't have any conditional use permit on it or anything. It was just industrial land. So if they bought it, they could just build. That was their intention. So then within that 3-month period, we created the ordinance to have a conditional use permit. So then they said, well, we don't know if we can buy the land until we know if we can get the conditional use permit. So then they said, we're happy to slow it down because we weren't ready, is what it was. Like, they were kind of, they wanted to get it in May, but they realized they had a ton of work they had to do in order to really bring this together. And we encouraged them to reach out to the community, PR campaign, and full 9 yards, because this is a data center and you must know what's going on because everybody knows. So they agreed to kind of slow things down. And then, that's when we decided to bring in Chris as a go-between, let them know that Chris would be who will be our representative that they talk to. And for the most part, they went to work, making plans and trying to get a PR campaign and stuff like that together. So as far as I understand, they're starting to roll that out now, but they're not coming and asking us for permission because we're not for this and we're not against this. Like, we're just here to do our job. And so we're like, if you're gonna do something, you gotta do it on your own.
And they played hardball and all, but basically saying, well, if you don't grant this, we're just gonna sue you. We're gonna sue you into oblivion.
They have not said anything like that. I don't think they wanna go down that road, but I don't know them personally. I would think that, So we did meet, there's somewhere in there that they wanted to introduce us to their PR people. And at that point in time, we said, conditional use permit, we are hiring an outside counsel, they agreed to that, and we said we want a community benefits agreement, and they agreed to that. And, no, there hasn't, then kinda, we separated, so whatever we're getting now is through Chris. There hasn't ever been any kind of negative pushback or hardball or anything like that.
Yeah, the only reason I ask is because, yeah, every day we experience that. Well, we're gonna file a lawsuit, and
Right.
our response right to it is fine, go ahead, that's why we're employed,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to confirm and verify that this isn't what's driving,
Oh,
community
yeah.
leaders' decision making, that, just, ooh, we might get sued, that
No,
kind
I
of
would hate
thing.
this. I'm not, this is necessarily something, I go around like bragging about, but I've been like through express recycling, through the city, the things that are all thrown out there, I realize now it's just a thing people say. And they do it all the time, and anyone can sue anybody, I've heard, so, no, it's not necessarily a fear thing.
There are a number of towns and cities throughout the state that have, either outright banned them or have a moratorium. I haven't read any incidents where the companies have sued these communities for doing so.
But you may not really want to do that. The issue, in my background is IT, 40 years, and I think in 6 states, dealt with data centers, and the problems you're concerned about, they exist. But in all the years that I was involved, I never encountered that in any of the data centers, I would say. Reason you may want to do that is it's not just what they will represent in the beginning, it's what that will turn into. We were talking about jobs before, and Mike mentioned my knowledge in this area. The jobs that they'll have that will be in the city will not be the highest end jobs, because what will happen is the facility will be owned by some entity. The equipment inside the facility may or may not be owned by that same entity. And the equipment will then be used by multiple entities, their programming staffs, their management staffs, etc. They won't be here. They'll be somewhere else. They could be anywhere in the world and they can do it. So what will happen? Who will be here? The people that will be here, and we talked about this the first time I was here. For sure, your custodial and security staff will be local people, obviously, they have to site. There will also be 1 to 3 tiers of support personnel that take care of the equipment and manage the use of the resources, because that's really what it is. It's not just data storage, it's data processing. We call it computer time in the industry. But you have to also realize that all the people that have companies that have contracts with the people who own the equipment, they're gonna come here. They're not gonna stay here, but they're gonna come here. That's gonna bring in additional, okay, you can call it tourist revenue to the city, but that will bring in other partners of theirs who will come in. We'll have conferences here and so forth, and they'll want to see the data center, and they'll want to talk about it. So it snowballs into other industries that will then move in, is what happens. I've seen
But
it happen
I don't
before.
understand though, why would they care where their data is being stored? I mean, I go on Google Docs and I put a document on there, and I don't know where it's located, and I don't know if I need to know.
Because if you're actually working in the industry and you are now, your business, whatever it is reliant on the processing that's being done there, the computer processing time, memory, and data storage, you're gonna wanna know and interact with these people to make sure that when you need the services, they're available. When I pick up my phone, if I connect to a data center in Kentucky and they're having some kind of problem, the person who has the processing, who's renting the processing time from that Kentucky data center, will transfer those requests to somewhere in Omaha or New Jersey. So when I'm using this thing, it doesn't matter to me that that facility, a specific facility is operating. If you're making money by doing processing in a data center, you want to know, how is this going to be maintained? And you're going to want to have conferences with the people that are maintaining the equipment and the company that owns it. And some of that will happen here. So it turns into, like I say, more hotel renting space, more conference space, more restaurant use, more housing being built over time. It's not like a light switch will flip and all of a sudden all this industry will start going, hey, we want to go to Wisconsin Rapids, but it will happen over time. But at the same time, okay, the concerns that you're bringing are valid, and we just need to be vigilant. And I agree with the mayor when he says we need to have people involved that are not just experts in the field, but legal experts and community people to develop that. Mike and I are actually meeting tomorrow at 2, I think it is, at his office, and we're gonna discuss some of these things. So, you know, I'm not in the camp where I'm saying, no, we should not do this, and I'm not in the camp where I'm saying, yes, we should do this. But I am in the camp of saying we need to investigate it, because I feel like this town turns down opportunities time and time again for various reasons, and we can't keep doing that, because we need industry that brings money in, just doesn't roll over the same money in the city over and over again.
Thank you. And to answer, I think Mary Blomquist had to just leave, she's one of the aldermen, and she just brought for the August, council meeting, or for the August Public Works, to talk about the moratorium and what we can do and the legalities behind it. And I don't wanna necessarily go into it right now, I'd rather wait till we get to that point. And again, I think what the point was we made before is, we can do whatever we wanna do, and we can take that heat and figure out where it goes. It comes down to, what do we want to do? Because not everybody disagrees, is against data centers. So in the end, the council, it's the way it's designed, the council gets to decide, and they shouldn't be forced into, telling everybody what they feel beforehand. It's supposed to be after they get the actual information, not information from, the internet and social media, but actual information from the company itself, and they listen to that, and they ask questions, and we have a public hearing. Like, this is the process that we always do for every company that comes in, and we just haven't got to that point yet. We're doing all this stuff beforehand, so we're trying to get to that point so that they can do their job, which is vote at yes or no.
Maybe one might be better.
One.
I just have 2 o'clock. But for you, the point he raised, these data centers have to work. They can't really survive a lot of offline time. What's the deal with the Public Safety Commission? Are they gonna approve of 100 or 100 plus, 150 megawatts of generation? What's the timeline on that? And then for the diesel backup generators, that having to put out 150 megawatts of electricity from diesel in the middle of town, that seems like it might be a little problematic. And what type of, that's something where I don't think zoning is gonna save you. I think have you considered something with regards to regulating air quality, emissions for public health? And then do we have a public health or civil engineer who can explain that in terms of justifying an ordinance in that respect?
We'll start with Joe Eichstead as our civil engineer, but yeah, we have to dive into that 100% to figure out how that's gonna happen, between the noise problems and also the pollution problems.
Because if the PSC, so if they use solar or wind, they can kind of run roughshod over any county or municipal objection. I think everybody sort of knows that. But if they're using natural gas, there's no guarantee that Alliant or anyone else is gonna get that done and satisfy all the statutory requirements in the time that this data center needs that electricity. And then we're left with, they really do have 150 megawatts of diesel, and that's what they're doing, because the PSC didn't come through for them. I mean, solar and wind, I think solar farms that people don't want are 33 and up in Wisconsin in terms of they got challenged by the community and the solar farm got built anyway. Natural gas doesn't have that record. And if it's not there, then we're looking at 150 megawatts of diesel power generation, like a mile and a half from your house, 300 feet from the police station. Like, I think we gotta take that into account too, that the things they want, that they need to make their promises may also not manifest.
I can tell you that they really don't want to run them on those diesel generators because it's highly inefficient and it's very expensive and it's terribly difficult to coordinate. We have to run all of those because it's not like, you just turn them all on and they then collectively generate power and it goes in this thing. All the distribution controls are insane.
Right.
As a commissioner on your utility, I can tell you that the natural gas generator turbines, the lead out time is very long because of data centers. I'm sure they have some kind of plan and how to make that work. But I can also tell you they do not run it on diesel generators 24 hours a day. I think the biggest one you can get is 3 megawatts. So you're gonna have like 40 or 50 of these things running. They don't want to do that. The diesel consumption alone would kill them to do that. Those are strictly for, oh my, our primary sources failed. We need to run this until it comes back on. Not, well, let's start up our data center and hope that we get, the power we need from another source.
That's a really interesting point, though, the wait time to build up a natural gas facility. That's something I don't think we're all thinking about either, that we do think that Alliant has to add, like they have to add to power this. And if the parts they need are years out, that's an interesting point that we didn't even think, like we're thinking a lot about that problem, but the natural gas has its own set of issues.
Well, and they may have the ability to move up that timeline for themselves where the utility can't. It's an unknown that we don't know. The power generation thing is one of my questions. I don't understand the numbers based on what I read, but I'm sure they have a plan. I'd just like to know what that is.
And then you factor the weather. I mean, how much did we go out this winter? I don't know. I'm not saying we're out of power all the time. But you'd think there would be times when those generators are gonna run.
Oh, they absolutely will, and they will run them at least once a month for tests. They'll do that. Those tests will last 15 to 30 minutes, and then they'll shut them off. To make sure they're available.
So typically, if we're out of power, it's because a squirrel got in somewhere. It's usually not because the Alliant went down.
It's true.
We've had some bad storms where
Or
there
the
hasn't been power
lines,
for like a
lines
week.
go down. I guess I was.
So I
being
guess for a
facetious.
week, 24 hours a day, I don't wanna hear the generator.
Pump
We
transformer.
live directly across.
Our biggest failure actually, again, as commissioner on your utility, is squirrels. The next biggest thing is trees down overhead lines, some kind of storm that did that, or transformer that fails under load.
But keep in mind, this distribution system is purely industrial through Quebco.
Right.
WWLC has no part in the power that's coming. So it was all built for the mills. Quebco is the company that runs the electrical company for the mills.
Oh, I'm aware of that.
Okay, so they are separate and they don't overlap in that sense. I guess they overlap at Alliant if they're both buying power from Alliant.
How do we know if they're down?
Alliant,
Quebco.
No, Quipco, you do, because I worked the mill my whole life, and it will shut the machines down, transformer blows.
But how does the public know?
We're not
You
gonna,
wouldn't.
When
Mhm.
when the diesel kicks in.
Mhm.
then you'll know, they're
Then you'll
running
know.
a data center.
There's a few houses that Quepco powers, right?
Here, yeah.
So
Oh.
if you're friends with someone that is,
Uh-huh.
pays their bills to Quepco, then you might know.
If they bring it in from Alliant, ATC, American Transmission Company, will have to build new infrastructure in order to get the power here that they're asking for.
And then
And
what
that would
does
be
that
an
look
upgrade.
like? And this is just me being sympathetic to those people who are having eminent domain run through their house down in Georgia, eminent domain through their backyard for the power lines, like for the crazy big power that we don't typically see up here because of where we are. But where is the Alliance substation? Like, where would that physically?
Yeah.
Who is that when Alliant builds? And like you said, we are, as a society, using more power, like, so Alliant will have to upgrade, we're behind the 8 ball, whatever. Where does that, who does that impact, like, physically? When Alliant has to put in really big
So I don't know,
infrastructure?
You've probably seen it coming up 39, 51, all those new lines that have been going in over the years, that's all ATC. So ATC is the transmitter from the power plant to the distributor, which is Quebco or WWLC. So in between, they have American Transmission Company, and that's who's putting up all those big power lines. I mean, we'd actually do, like, our town has, you know, at one point in time, it was doing 250 megawatts, I think, with the boiler systems and the dams and buying stuff from
Oh,
Alliant.
sure.
I think they're up to 250, which right now, the entire city of Wisconsin Rapids and all its industrial accounts run on about 30 megawatts on average. So-
Daily.
Daily.
Yeah.
And then the mills right now run on about 45 megawatts with our mill machines in Rapids, because there's about, I think, four machines running. And then Buren, Nine Dragons, and Pixel, I think, in Stevens Point, we still run all those machines off of Quebco. That's about 45 megawatts of power. The dams do about 30 megawatts, so they still buy 15 megawatts from Alliant. They have capacity on their distributing system for about 50 to 60 more megawatts, and then after that, they have to build new transmission systems in.
This has probably been covered before, but, any guarantees that, utility costs aren't going to, increase for residents in the area?
So there's two different things there. One, yes, our utility rates are gonna increase every year while we're alive.
But as a result of, yeah.
But as a result of this being built, the only thing that I can say, like, again, me being a ratepayer, is that at some point in time, whether it be Alliant or WPS or Wisconsin Electric, whoever's generating the power, they're going to build new power stations that can generate way more electricity than they're doing now in order to compensate for the new things that are gonna be happening, whether it's new industry coming in or new data centers. And then eventually, they're gonna phase out our old power generation facilities, and we'll all go onto the new ones. And I think that will probably pay a part of those bigger facilities over time. That would be my guess, though. That's just a resident thinking.
Okay, because I've heard that it's on a separate grid, or it would be on a separate grid.
That would be awesome. If they built their own power stations and their own transmission and distribution, and it was just for data centers, that would be the best way to do this.
So it sounds like, yeah, residents would still be vulnerable to a spike as a direct result of the existence of a data center.
Alliant customers, for sure, even
Wow.
if we aren't here on WWLC.
Keep in mind too, that if you talk to the PSC, and I know some people hate the PSC, but they're do a job. They're there to do a job. They're just human beings like the rest of us. I've sat through seminars with them before this was ever a topic of conversation, saying that we've outlived our power generating facilities. Like, we're just living on borrowed time right now anyways. And that's why there were some regulations or some stuff that was set in place that is now being lifted, which is why our rates are going up, why a lot of people are seeing their rate increases even before the data center talks are happening. So in the end, like, electricity is the future, right? We're not going back to whale oil anytime soon, so we have to, yeah. But we're gonna be building it, we're all gonna pay for it to be built. It is all privately owned, like, generation is not owned by any public companies, it's all privately owned, so we're gonna pay for it one way or the other. If we don't pay through electricity, we're gonna pay through our phone rates and our phone data upcharges.
The water that it uses, is it only from the river, is it also coming from groundwater?
There's no water coming out of the river to be supplied by, well, I guess groundwater from WWLC,
So groundwater.
yeah.
Well, the city wells, right?
From the 5 city wells.
Yeah, the 5 city wells, so they're asking for 20,000 gallons when they wanna fill up the system, and then to maintain it plus potable water at the facilities. 20,000 gallons, you know, plus upkeep, I guess, and according to WWLC, that's not as much as most of the industrial accounts, and it wouldn't affect their system at all. But we'd have to put in place, like you guys were talking about, the safeguards that say, if you go over 20,000, then we have to stop, you know, and we have to figure it out again and say, this is what you asked for, this is what we gave you. And, you know, I mean, within reason, right, if it's a couple of gallons here and there, but if it, then we're gonna have to be able to shut it down and say, no, we can't do that, that wasn't the deal.
In terms of attracting, let's say, young families, workers, other businesses to the area, has there been an analysis of market attraction or market penetration for data center here in town? Or have we looked at other towns and seen whether data centers do attract other businesses and workers?
Yeah, I don't have that information right now, but I'll look into it. What's that?
I don't have specifics
Yeah.
on that.
I mean, again, in my mind, the way this would work is you're building the future and more things would come off of this and more things would be able to be generated, not to mention we're gonna have, like, I think for me, one of the things I'll fight for in the community benefits agreement is that we always have that 50 megawatts of power available, even if they need 150, then they have to build for 150 new because we still want 50 megawatts of power at least, because there's gonna be land left on Quebco land that we can build manufacturing plants on. So if we have 50 megawatts of power, that still makes us pretty welcoming to any manufacturing as we're bringing manufacturing back to the United States. Whatever that looks like, I know what you're saying about robots and technology, but again, I have faith in the human race that we're the ones that actually create the jobs and create the businesses, and we'll just figure out what else is needed next. And we'll just keep going, like it's an evolution of the life of people, not to get too philosophical.
I personally, oh, sorry, I'll spill my spiel and then you can go. I think that the best, if we get it, the best outcome that could be for it coming here would be to be the most state-of-the-art. Wisconsin, the headline is Wisconsin Rapids wrote such a strict community benefits agreement and the data center really wanted to come there that they followed, and this is the most environmentally friendly, sociologically friendly data center in all the United States, and then all the other data center developers want to come see it. That's, to me, that's how hard you write that
Right.
CBA.
And then stick to it.
And I'm wearing my pins, like, I'm just saying, like, ideally,
That would be a dream if it
Yeah.
worked that way.
Mhm,
In
mhm.
all the other communities.
Oh, I agree
That's
with you.
not what's happening.
But we can learn from things in the past, and we gotta assume that those companies are fixing the issues and they're building new ones that are going to be better if it happens. I would like
So
to be
one
the
of the
light on the hill.
statements that in the news article, Microsoft, the AI Center in Mount Pleasant stated they knew that there was gonna be noise. Tonal noise is what they called it. They did not, however, know it was gonna travel 1.5 miles down the road. But they're still fighting that battle. So they know it now.
I know that Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation has a rule now where they can apply, and they won't have to pay any sales tax on all the equipment that they're purchasing, they'll get an exemption.
There is no personal property tax in Wisconsin.
No, I know, but how are we gonna value this property? Is it going to be based on the cost of construction? Is it going to be based on the comparables in other areas? And what are the different taxing authorities that this would have to be split between? Is the school district getting some? Is Mid-State getting some? The city would obviously getting some, and then
The county.
and then the county. So is there any cooperation that you guys have had between the four of you to say, this is how we're gonna say that this should be valued, and they're gonna have to agree with it? Or, and then also, I mean, I'll just stick with that one
So
question.
is it a warehouse, or
Yeah.
is it a warehouse with all these expensive servers in it?
Exactly.
So.
Because if it's a half, I would estimate, or based on the fact that a 500-acre proposed development in Castro was valued at $1 billion. And it must mean we have about proposed half that amount of land that they're looking at, although they won't tell anyone. It must be 400, maybe $400 million or so. But most of that money is in the cost of the servers. So is this a warehouse, or is this a warehouse that has servers in it that are obviously made elsewhere, brought in, but part of the development? So do you tax based on
So
those
my-
servers being there, or just the warehouse?
Right. So my understanding is these are, designed more like a business, and I do have to find out, cause like the mill was always assessed by the state, and the state would figure that out, and then they would let us know what the findings were. I don't know if that's gonna be the case, but in talking to assessors, the way these are taxed is on the leases. And again, I hate going down this road because we don't know anything for sure yet. But they're based on the leases, the amount of money that they're generating is what the tax base is on. So you're looking at they're taxed per square foot. So you're looking at over 1 million square feet. And it could be taxed, I've heard large numbers, but again, I'm trying not to make this be about money, because then people think we're just making our decisions based on money. But if it's $100 a square foot, or $1,600 a square foot, which is both been on the table for different entities. So the money can be substantial. But again, I don't want that to be the driving force behind it. Yep. Yeah.
I have a bunch of things I could say, but I guess I'll stick to a question. Would you consider creating like an ad hoc committee or a task force to, I saw Maddie taking notes earlier, some of the ideas that have been mentioned about what might be nice to include in a CBA versus what can you legally include in a CBA, right? And so like, could you put together a task force that maybe includes a couple alder people and 4 or 5 of, I don't know, how often you guys have been having this meeting and how often you guys have spoken to each other, but, to actually get some of these things written in
Yeah.
record and
Yeah.
like maybe verified by the correct lawyer that they are something that is actually legitimate that could be included in
Yeah.
such a document, and maybe you're getting ahead of yourself and you wouldn't be allowed to do that because you don't have a specific proposal yet.
Right. It's kind of the battle we're facing right now,
Yeah.
but I'm kind of hopefully setting the stage here to say I want people from the community to help us with this, whatever we want to call it, and then, so it's as transparent as it can be, and again, I'll never claim I'm the smartest guy in the room, so I'd rather have the smartest people in every sector that are there to talk about this stuff so that we get the best deal possible for the future going forward. And if there are things that just can't be for legality reasons, we've tried. And things that they say no to, well, then we have the ability to say, you know, so we'll see where it goes. This is the third meeting I'm doing. Right now I have 6 scheduled, so there's 3 more Wednesdays from 4:30 to 6-ish. What else you got? That was it?
I guess I just wanted to warn people when you compare between states, right? Wisconsin is very manufacturing heavy state, and we have been for 100 years. So like if you look at South Carolina or Montana or whatever, they have a totally different history of laws, and you know, we've had the DNR in the state. The DNR regulates air quality things, and you know, if you're concerned about air quality in the city, DNR, we have a very pro-business government in Wisconsin, right? You know, like don't forget that we had a governor for multiple terms who said that Wisconsin is open for business, and so there's not a whole lot that we can do to say no. If you're concerned about air quality, they'll tell you to just build a bigger smokestack. So, you know, there's ways around these things, and ultimately, there's not a whole lot that you can do to say no, because you can be sued for discrimination. And so, just be a little, just watch the context of some of the laws that you are thinking about, because they're going to be different in Wisconsin than other states.
Which I think is maybe partly why in Town of Grant, when I talked to her at the end of April, she had told me Town of Grant was working to write a moratorium, and they were working with someone from UW Extension, but they didn't want to say for sure moratorium because they needed to work through what they wanted and the legality of a quote-unquote moratorium versus Town of Grant putting in a very strong ordinance. And I know that Town of Grant was coming at that from an angle of, we just got that solar farm over towards Plover that I was not super well aware of what was going on with that, but I know that Town of Grant did not want that to go in as a whole. And so that prompted them to be like, we are gonna write some ordinance, especially looking at the climate of data centers. So, but they were working with UW Extension to say, what can we do? It couldn't just be a blanket statement. But then you look at Door County just put a moratorium through this week.
So moratoriums are very specific to a few things. One of them being changing zoning, and then it is my understanding, and I think the lawyers might have more to add to this, or you're combining or splitting lots. But typically, it's kind of reserved for those things, and it doesn't have anything to do with our situation in terms of it being zoned industrial already, and the entire lot is the lot itself, and also being owned by outside entities. So we don't have as much stake. But again, we're gonna bring that conversation to the, I think it's Public Works, and then to the council next month. So it'll be in the public sphere.
How long would it take to build it?
Unsure, but I think under 2 years.
2 years, okay. And, you know, we all saw the video from Port Washington. Is that the kind of hellscape that we would anticipate, or would we also?
Yeah, if we start saying there's no way we're gonna let people build, I don't know, that's a tough one, right? Like, in order to build something, you have to have the time to construct it, like, but we can put we can put stuff out there to make sure the time is adhered to, and that we keep the dust down, and we can get them to, spray water and all that. Like, again, we have a specific site that has the ability to become, I don't know, something pretty, could be pretty impressive. I know that we don't think that way at this point, and I get it.
How many additional acres do you guys think are gonna have to be condemned or domained around the 220 acre site?
I think if if this plan were to go through, it was only looking at about 175 acres, so there would actually be, another one of the proposals I wanna put on the table is, can we take the heat from the data center and build the latest and greatest greenhouses and use the heat to heat the greenhouses to grow food all year round? Like they're doing it in other countries with their data centers. So I think that would be a good thing to put in a community benefit agreement, something like that. We'd have about 50 acres to work with over there. There is another plot of land on the other side of 34, but it's a little bit more marshy area that hasn't been developed, but that's also owned by CRG right now, so that is on the table, I guess. Well, see you next Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Yep.
Appreciate you being here.